So, a cool reflection on the Hercules versus the Hydra um, parable, if you will, is the conscious mind is always going to be represented by the solar energy. The solar energy is where we draw our interaction with the physical, is through light and interaction with external beings, as the sun is more known for emitting than, you know, taking in. Now, the monster tends to represent the feminine force. It's always the mother of monsters. Um, Now, that's not to say it's anything wrong in itself, but these monsters are explaining subconscious drives that are always going to go against the social construct, because the social construct in itself is a sickness. I mean, you could look at the world we live in today and you could understand that something is really wrong about whether human beings are just what we have become. I mean, the world doesn't look like the world. Earth doesn't look like Earth. It looks like concrete. You know what I'm saying? Um, all types of shit. I mean, the comforts of America is at the suffering of like so many other countries. So it's not really hard to kind of see these hidden monsters in plain sight, if you will. So with the Hydra, what we have on a subconscious level is um, something that comes into being. For example, let's use the example of thought form. Well, we're speaking on thought forms anyway. So the Hydra, the many heads of the Hydra, is how one thought can develop into an entire psychosis. So, you know, you could be in a passive state, long day, whatever, state of mind where you just, there's something you want to prove after all. But I mean, like, let's say you just ate a meal, watched a movie and shit, and you just kicking back and you think, I'm that nigga, right? But it is self flattery, and it is not accompanied with any kind of pathway. There's nothing wrong with anything you really think is how you go about manifesting these things. You could do it ignorantly, or you could do it willfully, consciously. You know, with the solar energy. Ideally, you want to understand and use both, but you're I'm that nigga. You're not really thinking of like how you're going to manifest this, bring this to life. So what happens from here is as you go out in the world, you have this thought ingrained in you. I'm that nigga, I'm that nigga, I'm that nigga. And that's just one thought, right? So what happens is when you go out into the world and you don't have any pathways of manifesting this thought form, because bear in mind, thoughts seek being, they seek to become, they seek to be made manifest. Um, and another example of this is like when somebody has an idea. You could have an idea, and you could have an idea, and if you don't fulfill it, then you end up seeing it somewhere in the world manifested through someone else. These things aren't solely like tied to us. We are simply, if you will, organic portals that they seek to be made manifest through. So when you're thinking I'm that nigga, you're not thinking yourself by name. You're thinking the thought forms are to an extent replicating systems. So the fullness of your thought, the state of mind that you're in, the energy that you're carrying as you're constantly like ingraining this into yourself is going to just replicate that. So even your insecurities. So even when you go, I'm that nigga, I'm that nigga, I'm that nigga, and you have undertones of uncertainty about that, it's gonna replicate that as well. And then what happens is, as this energy is emitted into our auric field and is seeking to be made manifest, it's going to do so by looking for like energy. because it's seeking to understand itself. It's seeking to become, so in seeking out like energy is going to agitate you and others, is going to draw you towards certain behaviors. Now, how this associates with the Hydra. When you go out into the world and it's I'm that nigga, I'm that nigga, I'm that nigga, like, and you don't really have anything tied to that but the fucking thought of just I'm that nigga, what happens is another thought form springs between you and that thought, because that thought is a life form of its own once it becomes a thought form. And not that it's an intelligent, like it's not always necessarily an intelligent being. What happens here is pure survival. Energy can seek out its own survival the same way an animal can. So it's going to do what is necessary, and what's going to happen is a medium is going to be sought out. I'm that nigga, but nothing about my characteristics, nothing about my personality, nothing about my behavior is actually fulfilling that. So what happens is another thought form is created in order to defend the first, in order to protect the body of the Hydra. So then it goes, I'm that nigga, until motherfuckers better recognize I'm that nigga. Motherfuckers better recognize I'm that nigga. Motherfuckers better recognize I'm that nigga. So then that becomes a whole thing in itself, and those are actually two different thought forms that's on your ass. And those are held with the undertones of jealousy, envy, impoverishment, greed. So then you're dealing with a whole nother heap of monsters on the undertone of those, because then you have the emotive, you have the thought forms, but thought forms are composed of emotions and intentions. So you have the actual emotions and intentions of these things existing in the undertones, seeking to be made manifest. So then they come to the surface as thought forms, and then these thought forms create more thought forms so that these emotions and intentions could interact with themselves and be made realized. So in that way, it is like the head of the Hydra, because if you have one thought that you allow to just live in your mind, is going to create a family, and that family is going to stay on your ass till it's made manifest. But not only that, it's going to spread to anyone within the frequency rate, um, within your realm of frequency. Is going to attach itself to anyone who hops on that frequency with you and go home with their ass, because thought forms spread like amoebas. So it's not like it just jumps off you and goes on another. That's superstition. What happens is the energy again replicates itself like a fucking Karibo or something, or Agent Smith from Matrix, and goes home with whoever else it feels like could manifest it. But it's gonna seek the highest food it could get within its realm of existence, because thought forms can be taken out of existence by just changing your frequency. Certain thoughts can exist in certain frequencies, certain emotions can exist in certain frequencies. So that's why when you're ready to change your life, it's so difficult, because these thoughts and these emotions know that they're going out of existence when you are adjusting your life towards something else. And it's going to be a violent shake before you vibrate it out of existence. And that's a whole nother thing of how you manifest through your stillness and through your passive states that we'll get into. But for now, I just had this image of Hercules and the Hydra, and it's just bear in mind that your solar system, your conscious self, to be mindful, to be aware, handling it with awareness, you'll know where the heads are sprouting, and you'll know where to lay the fire, which is just your concentration, your attention. You know what I'm saying? That third eye of Shiva was also shearing, you know what I'm saying? From eros to sensuality. Sensuality is how things begin to spread and relate to themselves anyway. So when you know where to lay your burning eye, then you're able to shear the head off of these thought forms and make the adjustments necessary to transform your life, but also to be mindful enough to know when a thought form isn't organic to you, and then you're dealing with a foreign thought form, which you want to cleanse through meditation, through vibration, color therapy, spiritual baths, even spiritual showers, basically anywhere that your mind feels strong, that you're really releasing the negativity. My thing is I drink a lot of water. I gotta go pick up some like right now and shit, but I drink a lot of water. But when I piss, I'm manifesting letting go of all of that energy, because that relief you get too when you piss, it's just like I go into my passive state and I like embrace that moment as a moment of release of all the toxins, both like chemically and energetically. You know what I'm saying? So really, when you step into that realm of chaos, and that's going back to using the feminine force, the realm of chaos is your imagination and being able to create your own ways of cleansing and releasing these energies, these thought forms, and adjusting them, because the same way that we talked about how they could come into being negatively, you could flip that in the positive light as well and allow certain thoughts to propagate like a garden. But I'm going to keep this short for now, so peace.